All right, we're live here on another Friday and an exciting conversation today about sales training and sales enablement. We have Bethanie 𝐍onami joining us today, who is an expert and CRO for her own company, and she has enlightened me on a number of different approaches. I can't wait to dig into some of the AI tools that she introduced me to. I always thought I was a student of the game, and Bethanie kind of opened my eyes to another couple approaches that I hadn't thought of that I think would be really valuable for our audience. As Meg and I were talking about content for our audience this week, as you know, every week we open with a poll, and I did some learning on this poll as well. I am a subscriber to the advanced version of ChatGPT. It's $20 a month, but what I didn't realize is they've now shut it down because they've been so oversubscribed with users that were purchasing this software. Though the reason that I asked this question was this came up as a topic with another AI expert who was in a room of CFOs, and very recently had asked the CFOs if they had ever used ChatGPT. About 90% of the audience raised their hand saying that they use ChatGPT, but only about 5% of those same CFOs paid for the advanced version. So that got me wondering, well, how does that compare and contrast to my LinkedIn network when I pose this question? And indeed, a larger percentage do seem to subscribe to the ChatGPT Plus or GPT-4 package. But I don't know, Meg, did you have any reactions to this poll this week?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say for me personally, I'm still in the experimenting stage. So I'm using the tools that are available and that are free and kind of testing them out and seeing how they do. But this kind of prompted me to think that there's just so much opportunity. And I feel like, those of us who are still in the experimental stage really need to move past that and really start to put this to work more, I'll call it formally for lack of a better description, but these tools need to become part of our workflow. And I'm excited, Bethanie, that you're here to tell us a little bit more about what you're seeing and recommendations that you have for, helping people sort of take the next step in terms of embedding the resources that are available to us into our workflow to make it go better. So yeah, I think this just reminded me that I got some work to do, and I'm excited to get a little bit of a cheat sheet today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with ChatGPT, it's the forerunner, and everybody knows how to use it or what it is, but it's also garbage in, garbage out. So I think a lot of people think you can just go there and type something, it's going to masterfully come out with this response. But that's not the only option. If you're doing copy, you have Claude. Claude is free. They do have a paid version, but you can get 3 or 4 hours of Claude for free. Yeah. Google just came out with Gemini. Gemini is a bolt-on to Bard. Bard is free, and Gemini is free until they have a pricing model next year. It's very good. So what the advantage of Google is, it's the largest data integrator in the world. It's got more data on how we search, how we behave, how we buy, how we engage, all of those things. So they have a bit of an advantage over chat. So ChatGPT is not the only person in the game. It's just the commonly known one that people go to, but it's slowed down considerably. Once they added images and you could voice talk into it, you could always do those things before. You just had to use their marketplace or use a plugin. Now it's integrated. It's just gone like, ooh, the quality of the answers, the speed of the responses. They're struggling a little bit right now.
Well, that much more opportunity for other folks to jump in, right? Which is why I'm especially excited for you to introduce us to some of those tools. And also, though, I think it's the use case that really brings it to life. John, you just put in chat to ask your questions, and I hope people do. I think maybe, Bethanie, you could start with, what are some of the most powerful outcomes you're seeing with sellers who are taking advantage of non-chat GPT tools?
Yeah. So some of the things that we have to realize is AI is already incorporated in a lot of the things we do. We just don't think about it. It's incorporated into spell check. It's incorporated into like you're typing a message and like the text is finishing for you. And that is all intelligence that helps us do our jobs better or easier. And some of the tools that we're using from a sales perspective are how can we increase the connection with our customers? For those of us that are outbound, we're reaching out to complete strangers, many of which are very busy, that are getting pitched all day long. And we're trying to stand out and be different, but then also not be like a fake friend and be like, hey, how are you? Oh, I know this person. And it's hard because we have to do the outbound. We have to make the connection. We want to be authentic, but we don't know how to be authentic. So we pitch because we're salespeople and that's what we do. So there's tools that you can use that increase that chance of building rapport in a meaningful way. And sometimes we just don't know how to do that. And then you could be selling to people that have very unique personalities, IT, incredibly smart, finance, incredibly smart, and they just don't communicate the same way. They don't want to have these big, long conversations. John and I were just talking about it, and some of the tools we use will say bullet points, get to the point. They don't care about relationships. They don't care about niceties. Get to the point. And that just might not naturally be John's personality. So if there are ways that tools can help me understand the way I sell might not be the way that everybody wants to buy, then I'm better educated and at least I'm aware. Because before I've had massive success. So I'm like, the way I sell is the best way to sell. And it's not. So when John was saying like he's learning the game and he knows all these tools and crafts and all of those things, there's always something that can help us grow and go to the next level. We don't have it all figured out. So as long as we have these tools that help us be aware and be better, and then other tools to just help us save time. All of us are tied to a number. We're trying to hit a goal. Part of that is flow. How many calls are we doing? How many reps are we talking to? How many sales prospects are we nurturing? There's only so much time in the day. Well, then you got to get it in your CRM, and then you have action items to take away, and then you got to send the email, then you got to schedule the next note. All of those things take time, and there's tools that do 90% of that work. Is it 100%? No, because it's still AI, so it's not going to figure everything out. But does it save you 80%? Absolutely. So how are there things that we can just be open to make our jobs easier? And it's a better buying experience. The customer is happier. They're not like, oh, well, John is really great. I just really want the solution, but I could do without John. Like, we don't want that. We put too much time and energy in mastering what we do to want to have that experience with anybody.
Yeah, I think you make a lot of good points about sales time. And I don't know if you want to share your screen on the tool that you had shared with me earlier. In this tool, I don't want to steal the thunder, but when you showed it to me, I was blown away in terms of its capabilities, because we're going to do an example of John here in a moment, but John on John, so to speak. But so it's not just because of my own ego here. The tool worked really well. I've used this tool at Bethanie's suggestion and recommendation in a number of cases since she introduced it to me a few weeks ago, and I'm like blown away by it. So anyway, I don't want to steal the thunder other than say I'm really excited, but I'll let you take it from here.
So Humantic is an AI powered tool for those of us who are, it doesn't matter if you're an employee, if you are a business owner, or if you're a sales rep that's doing outreach on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a network. LinkedIn is based on relationships. And sometimes with our human mind and our human bias, we don't understand people. We don't know what to do with certain people. So what Humantic does is it looks at content that John has posted on LinkedIn and gives me a personality profile. So Megan and John, did you guys ever take the DISC test? Do you remember the DISC personality test?
Yes.
So we, like back in the day, hiring HR would be like, let's take your DISC test. And they like, that would go to your manager. They're like, here's Bethanie, here's her personality. So this test has been around for ages. But what this does is it tries to understand, I am a DS. So my personality is high dominance, high steadiness. John is a DSI. So what Humantic tells me is, listen, you're similar to John. You guys have some traits that are similar, but you need to pay attention because the way John likes to buy is not naturally the way you like to sell. It's just your personality. So it gives me some overview about John. If it has your birthday, it'll tell you how old John is. If it doesn't, it tells you how long they've been in business. And it kind of gives me a summary: driven but considerate, decisive but friendly, dynamic but sincere. And it gives me an overview. But here's how we can leverage this from a selling perspective. When you cold call John, here's ways to get his attention. Do a pattern interrupt. Have a confident style. Mix of informality and formality gets his attention. Speak slightly fast. Sound like you're a person that gets stuff done. Your tone. It even gives you a starting point for a script. Hey, John, this is Bethany. In 30 seconds, if I could share how 100% of sellers could, and it's got, I don't know if I talk like this, but it's got some not nice words in here, some grown-up words. How to write an email. To the point, formal, subject, salutation. Does John care about a salutation? Does he care about a greeting? I could use for bullet points. So it tells me my tone. When qualifying and prospecting, do this to build a winning connection. When we're reaching out cold, it's cold. There's no connection. So this just gives me some starting points. It also tells me what things could I do that would break trust or break their confidence. I would lose their confidence if I do these things. When negotiating and closing, the secret to closing fast is a strong combination of proof of results, relationship, and high levels of professionalism. So I don't want to get too comfortable and start cracking jokes and start being buddy-buddy if I haven't earned that trust with John. Will I ever get a clear answer? So how many of us have listened to what a person has said and we hang our bag on that, and that becomes our pipeline? And they never say no, but they also never say yes. So this says, will I ever get a clear no from John? And it'll say, yeah, you can get a clear no, but you have to ask, and you might have to be persistent about that. How fast or slow will John move? Will John take risks? So it just gives me all of this information on John. Now, here's another thing that I think is pretty cool. And Humantic connects to your calendar. It connects to your LinkedIn profile, and it also connects to your email. So if you are writing an email and it sees that John's on LinkedIn, it says, do you want my help writing this email? And so this personalizer, do you guys see the Humantic personalizer?
Yes.
Okay. So I just copied and pasted this long email, which is how I talk. I was just talking to Megan about going fishing, and she said, you're a deep sea fisher. I've never been deep sea fishing. I'm afraid of sharks. So I just start to go and ramble. Now, John may be a to the point person, and then I throw in some social proof. So what Humantic is doing is saying, okay, this is what Bethany wants to say, but how does John want to be communicated with? What do I need to say to build rapport? It's looking at his personality. It's looking at whether or not I'm being too wordy, and it rewrote it for me. Now, you need to read it. You need to make sure this still aligns with how you would have a conversation, but it says, Megan mentioned you're a deep sea fisher. Let's go fishing this summer. Don't worry about the sharks. I'll keep you safe. Want to connect for a virtual chat? And then here's my social proof. Our clients increase revenue by 300% and save 600 hours per year. Imagine what you could do with that extra time. Do you know someone else who wants to increase revenue? We've got a great referral program. Every new client, we give you an hour of coaching and mentorship for your sales team. So it helps me rewrite a message that I thought was great, but would not be great for John. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. And, I guess my observations and I've used it now for a couple of weeks, and I think, as you were saying, it's not the silver bullet. Like, you can't just run with the information saying it's going to solve everything. You're still going to need some level of your own eyeballing to make sure that it works, but it seems like it's pretty directional. I did notice, like I compared it to my wife. I asked her, "Hey, what do you think of the John profile?" But I also compared it to people in the industry too. And I asked them their opinion. And in fact, anybody who's testing their service, which is free for 7 days, and you can actually extend it to 21 with a credit card. If you test it, I'd love to hear your feedback as to what's working and what's not working. I found it generally working really well. My wife noticed that, she sees my personal, the guy who snores next to her every night versus the professional John on LinkedIn. And she did think that there was a little bit of a difference. And there were some elements in there that she was like, yeah, that's not quite you. But when I read it, I'm like, yeah, directionally, it actually is me from how I present myself professionally. And I also think that it really runs on the LinkedIn profile itself. So if your buyer doesn't have a lot on LinkedIn, it may be more challenging to get some value. Although I think they've got a default capability that can get some value based on other writings, if I heard you correctly, Bethany.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, I think it's been it's an extremely valuable tool. And you mentioned there's a couple other tools too that on the AI front that may be worth considering as well beyond Humantech.
Yes. So we have a couple of different tools. So one is, let me share my screen again. So one that we use for those of us who are on meeting after meeting after meeting, whether it's internal, whether it is with prospects or with existing clients. Oftentimes these meetings have action items, takeaways. If you're meeting with prospects, then you probably have a CRM that your boss wants you to put your notes in. And what this tool does, this is called Syble. And what Syble does, Sybil will join your meeting like a note taker. So many of us have used Fireflies, Otter, Phantom, some of the very common note takers, but this one is a little bit different. What this one does is it reads body language. It looks at nonverbal communication. So I don't know if you've ever heard that 93% of communication is nonverbal. Well, what are we counting on as sales reps? 7%. We're counting on the verbal communication that the clients tell us, and 93% is nonverbal. Well, unless we've been trained on body language or how to read people and what certain shrugging my shoulders means or what changing in the tone of my voice means, it's going to be hard to know where they're at. So Sybil will join as a note taker, and it will show me engagement, talk time. So all of these little areas down here are nods or smiles. It also summarizes some things. So outcome for the meeting, next steps. I can look at who was engaged and who had talk time, interest, pain points. This can automatically go into my CRM. It can craft a follow-up message for me. If I said, hey, let's meet again on December 11th at 2 p.m., it'll say, do you want me to set up that meeting for you? The other thing that Sybil does that I think is really great is it will look at responses when you're presenting your screen or slide deck. So if you're a startup and you have a really complex product that you sell and the methodology is your secret sauce, it's how you do the magic. And you have it broken out as simple as possible. It's in a graphic. It's got pretty little things that move. And you ask questions and you say, hey, this is the methodology. This is awesome. Does anybody have any questions? And everybody's like, nope, I get it. It's great. It makes perfect sense. Well, when you look at Sybil, it says, hey, when you were presenting your methodology, 86% of people were lost, distracted, confused, or just completely like checked out. What? That's completely different than you asking everybody and everybody's like, oh, I'm good. This makes complete sense. So what it helps you gauge is, how am I communicating? Sybil is just one example. There are also sales enablement tools that use AI. So if you have a big sales team, you can use tools like Attention. You have to have an onboarding process. You have to have sales scripts, Q&As, knowledge base, but it listens. If you have qualifiers that have a 15-minute call, they have to ask 3 questions in 15 minutes. and you get somebody that's chatty on the phone, it's great conversation, but you haven't asked those 3 questions, then the AI will say, hey, you've got 4 minutes left. You haven't asked a single question yet. Get to the script. If they ask a question and say, well, how do you compare to this? This is your competitor. AI knows that. It looks for the answer to that question. It pops it up on the screen. So there's so many where back in the day, we'd have a sales playbook and we'd have to like go through the playbook and find the answer. Those days are gone. So these tools are here to really make it so much simpler. John or Megan, do you have questions about Syble or some of those tools?
Well, I think what an interesting coaching tool this is. I was just thinking, even there could be use cases beyond sales. Like, for example, I work for an analyst firm, and our team do a lot of presenting. And I would imagine this is the kind of thing where they could get a sense for whether it's on a sales call or just a regular discussion with a client. You could really get some coaching on whether or not your style is landing well with the people you're trying to reach.
Right.
So I'm thinking too, this is one of those things that maybe takes the bias or the perceived bias out of managers being the only ones who really provide coaching on how to conduct yourself on a call and how things are landing. Because they'll have, even if the person, even if the seller doesn't believe what their manager is telling them because they've got very different styles or whatever it might be, they should feel comfortable taking what they're hearing from a Syble at face value and using that to improve their performance. Hopefully taking it to heart. And because it's not coming from a person per se, it's coming from something that feels a bit more objective. But what's your experience been with how sellers receive this information and what they do with it?
I think if sellers, many of us are valued and measured based on our performance. And if there are ways that we can perform better, then I'm all for it. Like, help me do my job better and make it easier and save me time. So I think it's really a culture thing, and it could be down to the rep, because sometimes you have reps that you can't tell anything. They're hot shots. They've been wildly successful, and they're not going to want to use these tools. But I think for a culture that's supporting people with learning and tools, and how can we improve the customer experience, and that will result in more revenue, and that will result in more referrals, they're perfectly primed, because this just helps us do better.
I love that sort of spirit of constant improvement is something I really respect about sellers who are really, as John calls it, students of the game, right? There is that desire for constant improvement and feedback and taking it and using it. So I think that's great. In terms of the time savings, where do you see some of the biggest benefit? And are there any, and also I know there were other tools you wanted to share, so we can do that, but I'm just curious to see, what you think in terms of the biggest impact on rep productivity.
Yeah, so we've seen with using tools like Syble, and note takers are great because we're all on web meetings. There's rarely, some organizations are just now getting back to sales meetings where we're actually in a room with everyone. But web meetings are kind of the norm today. So when we're using tools like Syble, we typically see that a rep can save 2 hours a day, 1 to 2 hours a day, especially for those that are qualifying all day or on calls back to back to back. And that's just a better quality of life for the rep too, because if you're doing your job and you're on calls all day, but then you got to go home, you got to greet the kids, you got to feed the dog, you got to make the dinner, and then you have to work for 3 hours after you finish, like, just being present with your family, that's not a good quality of life. So if there are ways that we can leverage these tools to just shave an hour a day, that's 5 hours a week. If it's 2 hours a day, that's 10 hours. That's a whole day that you gain back from just not having to do these redundant things that are important, but just take away from you hitting your number. So I think there's so many things that we just have to find a better way and what works better for us.
I know I've been a Syble user for, probably better part of 2 or 3 months now. I've beaten the hell out of the tool.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to get their founder on our account-based Friday, and we're having mixed success there because I think she's so incredibly busy. But what I've noticed with it is it saves time with me having to get information from my team. So I've given licenses to my team, and rather than me having to be on those calls, I get the Cliff Note version. And John in the Humantic world deals well with Cliff Notes. It's just bullets around the pain points and the issues, and I'm able to, like, be the doctor and go deep into those issues, much deeper than what they're able to go through.
Right.
So it adds that extra value and saves additional time there too, which I hadn't thought of that use case. But it's been really valuable, and it's been valuable too because we're on so many Zooms, and I'm getting amnesia as I get a little bit older here. It's helpful to go back, right, and see what the hell did I actually say or promise or do. So it's been very valuable in that regard. You had a third tool. I think we got a couple minutes left.
Okay.
But we got time here if you want to share that third tool. I don't want to steal all the thunder about my success with Syble, but
so this is a tool that's called Engage AI. And what this does is it allows me to comment on other people's posts. So I think people there's a way bigger opportunity on LinkedIn that I think than certain people understand. So there's 90 million decision makers. There are people that can influence the buying process. 60 million of those people can cut a check. And if we're just showing up pitching, or we're just showing up trying to reach out to people, then we might need to look at it a little bit differently. Where LinkedIn right now, last week, they changed their algorithm and they took timestamps off of content. There are 1 billion users on LinkedIn. 0.004% create content on a consistent basis. So where we can use LinkedIn is to help overcome sales objections through client success stories, to highlight value propositions, differentiators through content. So you have a time right now where there's a supply and demand problem with LinkedIn, where they've got to put 10 billion pieces of content in our feed per day. But they only have 3 million people creating content, and not all of those are consistent. So our opportunity as a rep is to understand that buyers want to learn and educate on their own. They want to do research. So they don't have to show up for a call to learn about our company. They can learn about our company all they want on their own. So how can we support that journey? Through content in LinkedIn. That's the first thing. The second thing is the way to get more reach and visibility is to engage, is to comment on decision makers, comment on your dream client list. If you're targeting CIOs, comment on CIOs of companies that you're not even connected to that are posting content. Every person that you engage with, your content gets in front of 12 more people. So if you're doing content that's valuable and supports the sales process, supports your brand, supports your value proposition, your differentiators, and you're engaging, then this is the secret formula that you won't just be doing outbound. You'll start to have people reach out to you, which makes your job way easier. Now, this is a cheat sheet where you can basically use this tool called Engage AI, and you'll see, let me find a text post. There's a lot of graphic posts. So this is, I'm trying to find something that has a lot of comments. Okay, so here's one that has a lot of comments, has a lot of reposts. So I can say something friendly. It's going to read the post. It's going to see what other people are commenting about, and it's going to create a response for me. Now, so it's thanks for sharing these websites. Always eager to discover useful tools. We'll definitely check them out. It doesn't have to be Einstein-worthy Nobel Peace Prize winning, but I can train Engage on how I respond. So if I respond friendly, I want to be curious, enthusiastic, and insightful, but I want to have a friendly response. How do I want to be funny? How do I want to disagree? How do I want to congratulate? How do I want to prompt a question? And then I can have these unique voices that may tie in what I do to my comments. So this allows me to basically train LinkedIn, Engage AI on how I want to respond on LinkedIn, and it can just write the comment for me. So I think a lot of times when people think about LinkedIn or think about, oh my gosh, I don't have enough time in the day, You don't have to spend a ton of time. You can just engage in 5 people's posts, create a dream list of who are your dream clients, who are your dream decision makers. You can put it in a Google Sheet. Every day you chip off that list. Because guess what? Not everybody's active on LinkedIn either. So you might have this dream list, but your decision makers never on LinkedIn. But there are other people, because a lot of our decision makers have networks of other decision makers. So it's valuable for us to get that visibility in their network, because then those comments will just expand our reach and expand our proximity. So it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be a 5-paragraph thing. 1 or 2 sentences is fine. If your decision maker responds, guess what? They're going to say, who's John? I don't know who John is. Who's Megan? They're going to look at your profile. They would have never looked at your profile if you sent them a pitch. They would have just ignored you.
That's a great point. And just rough order of magnitude, we've shown 3 tools today. Humantic, which integrates with LinkedIn and your calendar and your email. That I think it's about $500 a year for the premium service. The Syble, I think, is about $45 a license, if memory serves, is what I'm paying. What's the cost of Engage?
Engage is $30. So there's a free version. You can do 5 comments a day for free. And you can even train it for the free version. And then it's $30 a month.
Yeah. The thing that strikes me is how affordable these are. I mean, this isn't a budget breaking. I know when you add it up over a large sales organization, that can start to get, the numbers look different. But as individual productivity enhancers, even if it's something you fund yourself, I mean, the prospect of getting somewhere between 5 and 10 hours back a week, my gosh, that's a really big opportunity. That's, what I love about where these tools, where this market is going. It really is, to me, the promise of not having to do the things you don't want to do and making time for the things that you do want to do, that are so hard when you've got those routine tasks in front of you. Bethanie, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us.
No, it's my pleasure. It's a blast. I have fun.
Awesome. Bethanie, really appreciate you joining us. And we're at time here. We could probably go all day long on this stuff.
I know.
Grateful that grateful that you invested the time and expertise in sharing your experiences with all 3 tools: Humantic, Syble, and Engage. Those are a terrific trio. Next week, same time, we have Rod Cherkis, who is the Chief Customer Officer, or has branded himself as a Chief Customer Officer. He's got a consultancy and practice around the customer success function. We're going to be talking a lot about that, and we're going to go even deeper than we did 2 weeks ago when we had Winning by Design, former consultant, who shared her vision as well. We're now going to hear from Rod and kind of get a little bit deeper from a customer success perspective. So with that, I appreciate everybody joining, and we'll see you next week.